So Keir Starmer has finally delivered on his promise to recognize the State of Palestine. He may have done this under pressure from his Labour backbenchers, but he must be applauded for fulfilling his promise, even though he must also continue to face condemnation for his government's active participation in the Gaza genocide by Israeli terrorists.
The hope of a two-state solution is fading. But we cannot let that light go out. That is why we are building consensus with leaders in the region and beyond around our framework for peace. This is a practical plan to bring people together behind a common vision and a series of steps, including the reform of the Palestinian Authority, that takes us from a ceasefire in Gaza to negotiations on a two-state solution. We will keep driving this forward. As part of this effort, I set out in July the terms upon which we would act in line with our manifesto to recognise Palestinian statehood. That moment has now arrived. So today, to revive the hope of peace and a two-state solution, I state clearly, as Prime Minister of this great country, that the United Kingdom formally recognises the State of Palestine.
Also announcing the recognition of Palestine were Canada and Australia, two countries who actively supported the Israeli genocide in Gaza at the beginning. France too has just recognized Palestine, and Luxembourg and Malta too will join.
We must do everything within our power to preserve the very possibility of a two-state solution. Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security. The time has come. This is why, true to the historic commitment of my country to the Middle East, to peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians, this is why I declare that today France recognizes the State of Palestine.
This effectively means that 4 out of the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council have now recognized the State of Palestine, leaving the US isolated. The reaction to the UK's announcement was swift and sharp from certain usual suspects. As expected, Israeli terrorists and war criminals reacted with anger. Yoav Gallant, who has an arrest warrant issued against him by the International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity, wrote this on Twitter, and I quote, "There will never be a Palestinian state. Starmer, the British mandate ended 77 years ago. You should focus on the Islamist surge in the UK, not on Israel." End quote. But this genocidal maniac's useless outburst aside, London witnessed quite a moving and emotional moment as the Palestinian ambassador to the UK raised the Palestinian flag outside what would now be known as the Palestinian Embassy in London. We have shared this video on this channel, but I want you to watch this again. This brought tears to my eyes.
Will rise and Palestine will be free. Thank you.
The reason why it brought tears to my eyes and made many others incredibly emotional was because this moment marked a profound shift in how the Western countries now view the illegal settler colony and its rogue regime led by another war criminal, Benjamin Netanyahu. This was a watershed moment akin to how the global fraternity began to shift their politics towards the apartheid South Africa in the 1970s and the 80s of the last century. Whilst it's true that the recognition of Palestine by the UK and other Western countries is symbolic, but this completely changes the perception of Israel globally. To start with, the UK government has already updated the terminologies for Gaza and the occupied West Bank in all its official communication. It now calls these two territories as Palestine, which then means that the UK will automatically be forced to ban Israeli products from the West Bank in the future, as this would be deemed illegal. The Palestinian embassy in London, which was only a diplomatic mission up until now, would enjoy full diplomatic privileges. The UK would now establish full trade and bilateral ties with the State of Palestine and treat Palestine at par with the illegal settler colony of Israel, something Israeli terrorists have always detested. They simply hated the idea of being treated equally with Palestinians. In a way, they were right, since Palestinians are far superior than them. But this development has done a few other good things to the cause of Palestine. And to me, they are more important than everything else. There is a renewed global spotlight on the Israeli barbarism in Gaza and the West Bank. More and more British politicians and experts around the world are now openly calling out Israeli savagery. This Liberal Democrat politician, for example, today told his party conference that Israeli atrocities in Gaza were indeed a genocide.
Layla was right to call for the recognition of Palestine, and we today welcome the government's belated decision to follow our lead. Ed was also right to call for the sanctioning of extremist ministers Ben Gvir and Smotrich. We have been right. We have been right to call for a halt to all arms sales, to ban imports from illegal settlements, to call for the arrest of Netanyahu and Gallant under their ICC warrants if they come to the UK, and to recognise that in Gaza, what is happening today is a genocide.
Then Gideon Levy, a renowned Israeli writer, now urges the Western countries to go a step further to officially boycott and apartheid Israel the way they did to apartheid South Africa.
They just have to learn from history and to do exactly what they have done toward the first apartheid state, namely South Africa. It was very effective then. It is thanks to the international community that we don't have anymore an apartheid regime in South Africa. Same means should be aimed at Israel.
Israel has a lot more to lose domestically in the Middle East. Remember, a number of Arab countries, including the UAE and Bahrain, normalized their relations with Israel a few years ago, ever since Netanyahu threatened to annex the West Bank in retaliation to the Western countries' recognition of Palestine. The UAE has already responded by saying that this would be their red line and the diplomatic ties between the two countries would be adversely impacted. Bahrain too is weighing its options in the wake of Israeli bombing of Qatar. Bahrain's immediate neighbor, Saudi Arabia, has already signed a new defense deal with nuclear Pakistan by forming a NATO-like alliance. There are reports that Bahrain too could join such an arrangement. Egypt too, Israel's immediate neighbor, has begun openly declaring Israel as its enemy. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who was imposed on Egyptians through a military coup by Americans to depose the democratically elected President Mohamed Morsi in 2013, has called Israel an enemy, and he did so during the regional summit called by Qatar last week. As rightly reported by the New York Times, this is the first time an Egyptian president has called Israel its enemy since signing a peace treaty with the rogue settler colony in 1979. There are reports that Egypt is also building its military presence at the Sinai border near Gaza with an eventuality of a forced displacement of Palestinians by Israeli terrorists. Israel has accused Egypt of increasing its military presence, but Egypt has neither confirmed nor denied this allegation. As I said in my earlier videos, this is a defining moment for countries in the Middle East. They have the opportunity to join hands with Iran and the Houthis to bring Israelis to their knees. They can achieve something now that they couldn't during the 1967 war, and they have the benefit of a favorable global opinion. H.A. Hellier, a Middle East security expert at the Royal United Services Institute in London and at the Center for American Progress in Washington, he told the New York Times that for Arab countries, Israel is now a bigger threat than Iran, as was the case not too long ago for them. That's it from me. Thank you very much for your support of this platform and our journalism on buymeacoffee.com and Patreon. If you too think that our journalism is worth supporting, then you too should consider becoming part of it. Details are there in the description of this video. In the meantime, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so, because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism. God bless you all.